Hey everybody, this is David with Option Avenue, and today we have Gary Kassay. He's the author of Under My Thumb. We're going to be talking to him about his book and some ideas about adapting it. Hey Gary, how you doing?
Good. How are
Hey,
you?
good. Thanks for joining me. So let's just jump right in. Could you give us a brief summary of your book?
Sure. It's a story that takes place in a fictional town in Wyoming, and the main character is a detective who, when he was a teenager of 16, was basically blackmailed with 9 other kids to rob houses. And now it's present day, and he's a detective,
Hmm.
and in the town of Eagle, Wyoming, which is fictional. And he comes across a homicide where a person's left thumb has been detached, as well as his throat slit. And it reminds him of when he was 16, because the person blackmailing him back then was a person named DeSade, who used to actually hold a severed left thumb and toss it in the air. And the killings mount up. There's more killings. And it turns out that each person that is being killed was a member of this guy's gang.
Mm.
And the story continues. And the thing that is confusing to our detective, whose name is Eric Logan, is that he thought DeSade was dead. So he doesn't understand who's doing the killings, or if it even refers back to this 16-year-old gang. And it goes from there.
Okay, nice. Okay, cool. And then what inspired you to write the story?
Well, I was a NYPD canine officer when I lived in New York. And then when I retired from there, I was a photographer for a while. And then I got a job as an officer in Casper, Wyoming, where I live now. And then I became a detective. And I was writing books about New York. I had a New York series of books, and I decided that I should try to write a series about Wyoming, where I'm living now.
Hmm.
And that's it.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, that sounds good. That's a good background. All right, let's go through the main characters, maybe like
sure,
the top three main characters and
sure.
what some of their motivation, what drives them.
Okay, the first main character is Detective Eric Logan. He uh, is became a law enforcement officer because of what he had done when he was a teenager. It made him want to help people and make up for when he robbed people being blackmailed. Of course, he
Mhm.
was only a kid, so he didn't really know what to do. And now he's a detective, homicide detective in the town of Eagle.
Mhm.
His partner is Charles Blackwell. He's a kind of rash type of um, character who does silly things, like when he answers yes, he fires his two hands like pistols, like he like that. But
Mhm.
as he develops closer with Eric Logan, he becomes more and more of a um, regular guy, and he starts to learn from Eric, and they become very good friends.
Okay.
Okay, and I guess the third character would be um, his friend. Well, actually, another main character is going to be. Um, let me think. It's hard to it's hard to do that. But his oh, terrible. His friend from when he was a child, who's now the DA.
Okay.
He knows about the past, but Eric doesn't know that he knows, so to
Okay.
speak.
Of the gang or whatever.
Yes, all
Okay.
about the gang and
Okay.
what happened and all of that.
Okay. Cool. And then so then our main protagonist is Eric.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. So why don't you break down or describe his journey from start to finish in the book?
Okay, in the very beginning,
And
Eric is.
don't worry about spoilers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
we could just discuss everything.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the very beginning, Eric is approached by this older boy who tells him that he's going to become part of his gang and blackmails him. And then you don't really hear more about the gang until later on. But then the story starts out 20 years later. Eric's a detective. His first homicide is a guy found in an alley. His throat is cut. His left thumb has been cut off. And he's not sure if this relates to back when he was dealing with DeSade, the guy who blackmailed him. So then another murder comes. And again, the left thumb is taken off.
Okay.
So he starts to think about it. And it's been 20 years, so he doesn't remember the names of all the gang members, but he starts to investigate it. And he's trying to figure out who he can tell about what's going on, because he still thinks, he'll be fired from his job if they find out he committed burglaries when he was 16. So he's got a dilemma. And that's a big part of the story. His really wanting to do right and solve the crimes, but also trying to protect his reputation, his job, his wife, his kids from finding out anything. And the story progresses until the point where he finally tells his partner, Chuck Blackwell, what happened. And it goes back to when they were 16. DeSade had a cabin out in the woods where they would meet. One day, all the 10 members of the gang are standing outside the cabin, and they notice that the cabin has a chain lock all around it, and the cabin bursts into flames, and they hear DeSade inside, and they don't know what to do, and they think he died in the cabin, and they go on with their lives. Mm-hmm. So he starts talking to other gang members from back then and trying to protect them, but one after the other keeps getting killed, and they have no idea who's doing it, if it's DeSade or not. And then they go out to the cabin, him and Chuck, and they discover a trap door in the floor that leads to a tunnel that goes out past the woods where a car could be parked on a road. So now they think DeSade is alive, and they start to investigate, well, what could have happened to him? Then they get in touch, the FBI becomes involved in it, and they start to get information about DeSade, which is that he died. The FBI agent standing at his grave. So now they're like, who could possibly be doing these crimes? Mm-hmm. And the story continues until they get to the point where they figure out DeSade had got out of the cabin but was badly burned. He went to a burn unit. He got to a burn unit. He fell in love with the nurse who was taking care of him. And together, she had a daughter, so he was the stepfather. He told her all about the gang and how they tried to kill him and everything like that. And she's the one who's doing the killing. And it turns out she's the new deputy district attorney. We get introduced to her in the beginning of the book, but
are you saying the stepdaughter or the
no, the stepdaughter? The stepdaughter becomes, enraged that they tried to kill this man, and so she's taking revenge and everything. And in the end, they finally catch her by traveling to Casper, Wyoming, which is real, and they set up a trap for her of one of the victims who was not killed but hurt, and she goes there to try to finish the job, and they capture her there. And that's basically the whole story.
Yeah. Cool. Big twist.
Yeah. Well, I tried.
Yeah.
This was my actual, let me see, 5, 6. This was my 7th book that I wrote.
It's amazing. Not in a series. This is a separate story.
Right. There's 3 in the series at this moment. Okay,
cool. And then so you touched on a little bit. What are some of the themes you were exploring with the book?
Well, a lot of them are guilt about having done burglaries as a child. He's trying to overcome the guilt by being a police officer and being a good husband, a good father. But he is torn between what he did in the past, the fact that he witnessed somebody who he thought they killed, and then, dragging other people and friends and his family into this situation because people are dying. So that's a big part of it. Okay. Also, a lot of it is like how I feel about, crime, that there's good and evil, but it's never black and white. There's always gray areas, and there's always things that you have to look at from different sides.
Hmm. And did you have that before you became a detective, or?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when I was a cop in New York, I dealt with a lot of people, and there were times when someone might have committed a minor crime, and you really had to weigh whether it would make sense to arrest them or, to let them go or to talk to them. Or there's a lot of different. You have leeway. You
Yeah.
do have leeway in things, and a lot of people that I worked with were very black and white.
Hmm.
They were like,
Hmm.
he did this, that's it. You know, like for
Right.
example, the most popular thing was pot, marijuana.
Hmm.
Back when I was a cop, 1980, I started. Pot was a, you could, that's almost a felony depending on what you had.
Hmm.
Nowadays, it's legal almost everywhere.
Hmm.
I used to catch kids with a joint or something, and I'd just make them throw it out, give them a talking to, and let them go.
Right.
And that was sort of the way I worked my whole career. I always
Yeah.
felt you have to listen to the reason behind things are being done. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's how I would be.
yeah. Well, I tried.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're on the right side of history with the pot thing.
Yeah, that's for
So
sure.
so you were right. Okay, cool. And then the settings, so you've got some real cities and you've got some made up cities in Wyoming. How do
Yes.
those settings or locations enhance the story?
Oh well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with uh, Native Americans in the city of Eagle. The town is placed fictionally near the reservation
Hmm.
of the Arapaho and the Shoshone Indians here in Wyoming,
Okay.
and it's between them and Casper. So there's a lot of like open plains, and there's times when they go horseback riding, and you know, there's a lot of cowboy mentality among some of the characters.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I like
Because
that.
in Casper, Wyoming, it's
Hmm.
really 1876 still.
Really, they're holding on.
They're holding on. People walk around here with guns on their hips,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
literally.
I know some people like that in California.
Yeah, it's a little scary. It was
Yeah,
when I first got out here.
yeah. Okay, cool. So this is your seventh book, but what are some of the challenges you faced when you were writing it?
Well, I always tried to make each character realistic, having,
Hmm.
morals, dilemmas, problems, having to solve issues, and even everyday little things that occur that I felt need to be part of the characters' lives, even if it's a minor thing.
Right.
And I like to bring a new plot to every book I write. I mean, I try not to recreate the same plots as I've in each book.
Is that
Each book has a real
hard to
separate
avoid?
plot. It's hard. It's hard sometimes,
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm just beginning my 11th book, and it's hard to get started and figure out the plots, but
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
try to do the best I can.
Do you outline it and figure it all out in advance of writing?
That's one of the weirdest things. I don't. I sit down and write. I don't. I don't make any notes except as I'm going. I make notes of the characters so that if I use them again, I know where they came from. But I usually sit down and just write,
Uh-huh.
and somehow in the end, it all kind of comes together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I saw. Well, this one has a lot of good reviews.
Yeah, I think most of the books have pretty good reviews. And one of the things that I think is interesting for what the reason why we're doing this is I've heard from many, many readers that when they read my books, they picture it as a movie
Hmm.
in their minds. That's how they picture it. They can see the characters, they see the whole outline, and it's very realistic to them, and it makes them think of it in that way.
Yeah. We already talked about this, but some of the personal experiences that shape the narrative, that's your experience as a cop
Well,
and
yeah,
a detective.
yeah,
Yeah.
law enforcement, and the stuff in New York. For example, when I was in the canine unit in New York City,
Yeah.
something happened during training back in 1982, and I thought about it for 22 years before I put it to paper, and that's when I wrote my first book. So that experience really was the beginning of my writing career. And
It was a bad experience.
well, what happened was there was two identical dogs. They looked really alike.
Okay.
but one of them was so vicious he wasn't even trainable.
Okay.
And one day, the guy who owned the dog that looked just like him, but wasn't the tame dog, he went to the wrong kennel, and he opened up the door and he nearly got hurt really bad. And
Mm-hmm.
from that came my idea for the first book,
Mm-hmm.
which became a series. There are 5 books in that series,
Nice.
and that was the beginning of it. And I really never thought I was going to write anything or that it was going to get published, but I wrote it by hand, and which was a big mistake.
Yeah.
But my sister at the time was a very good secretary. She typed it up for me.
Oh, that's very sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, and then as she was typing it, she was like, "This has got to be published. It's a great book." And I was like, "You're my sister, and I don't really believe you." But
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
finally, I decided to try to get it published. I got a publisher, and then they wanted a sequel. And then from there, it just, I just kept on writing.
That's so cool. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a great experience. It really was.
For this book, though, what are some of the author's books or even movies that might have influenced it?
Oh, well, I read probably 2 to 3 books a week. I'm an avid reader, and I believe in. There's a quote by Stephen King that said, "If you want to write, you have to read," which I believe. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but I
Definitely.
read everything from James Patterson to Baldacci, Stephen King, Kuntz.
Hmm.
I just started the book Eruption, which is the Michael Crichton, James Patterson
Mm.
conglomeration. And I mean, I read a lot of murder mysteries. I've always read them, and I love series murder mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as movies go, I'm a real fan of classic movies. I love everything with Bogart and John Wayne and Henry Fonda, Jimmy Stewart. Those are all my movies that I watched with my dad when I was a kid, and I just love them. Those are the
Yeah.
ones I love.
Yeah. In this genre, what do you think sets your book apart?
I think partly the plot and also the realism of the characters and the way I describe locations. People have told me, like my New York books, people have told me I could go to those locations and follow exactly how you wrote it because they're realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And even though this town is fictional, I try to make every scene, uh, you know, uh, realistic without too much description that tends to bore people. I
Hmm.
kind of keep it to a minimum, but enough to give you where we are.
Right. Okay. Cool. Sounds good. And then, other than your personal experience and your experience as a cop and detective, and your
Yeah.
experience writing, was there other research you had to do for the book?
Oh yeah, yeah. I especially later on in the series, um, the next 2 books have a lot to do with the native reservation.
Yeah.
So I had to look up a ton of Shoshone language,
Okay.
and put all that in the book and some of their customs and things like that because I wanted it to be, as true to form as I could. And in the beginning of the book, I say, "I'm sorry if I screwed up somehow with the language, but I did my best." So yeah, I do some research, definitely.
And then, how do you envision your book on the screen?
Well, I really think it should be if it wasn't a movie, I think each of the 3 books in this series would be a great Netflix television series because I think I've written them where I know where the breaks could be, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've actually even I did a write up where I tried to take the first book and write it up as like a screenplay. So I did that. It's like 130 pages for the screenplay. I don't know, you know, uh, and I think it really would work as a series. As far as a movie, I still believe it could be done as a movie, but it might have to be cut a little bit, edited here and there, which, that's fine.
Yeah.
However, it needs to be done would be fine with me.
Hmm. What are some of the key scenes that you think are crucial for an
I think
adaptation?
I think the very first scene in the book is crucial when Eric Logan is met by DeSade by the lake. He's got like a private little cutout area that he likes to contemplate things. And when he's met there by DeSade, I think it sets the mood for the whole book. I really do. And then the next major scene would be the police station that Logan works out of, because he has a lot of interactions with his boss and the chief and several of the other detectives.
Okay. All right. This is always
And the
tough.
cabin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the cabin.
The cabin is a major part.
Oh, the first scene, the meeting between them, that's at a later date. That's not in the past at the cabin.
No.
You're saying
DeSade
when they.
meets with Eric when he's 16.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And then they go to the cabin 20 years later.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, this is always tough for people. I don't know why, but do you have a idea of a cast? Maybe some actors
Actually, I
drop
do.
in that you
I do.
visualize. Yeah, okay.
I always thought that Eric Logan could be played by somebody like Dylan McDermott.
Okay.
You know, Chuck Blackwell. I think he should be like that's a little tougher, but somebody who's like not too tall, like a little, kind of squared, kind of built person who's a little brash. I'm not sure what actor.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It's funny when you write, you sometimes think of people.
Yeah.
Like
I
like
think that would be the only way I could do it.
yeah. There were
Almost
times.
have a picture and then describe their background. I've never written a book, but I kind of think that's how I would try to put
Yeah,
it together.
yeah. Well,
Almost like on a board, you know those boards where there's the strings?
yeah.
Yeah.
The character in Longmire, the TV show Longmire. Did you ever watch that show?
No. Okay.
Okay. Well, it's a Western type show, and he would be perfect as Eric Logan, but he's too old. Eric Logan is really about 35, 36 years old. So it's got to be someone in that area as far as the main character.
Okay. And then for readers or viewers,
yeah,
how would you hope that the story impacts them?
Well, I think it would be great if they see that that you make mistakes in your past, and they don't necessarily outline your entire life. You could change, you could make things right again. You could do things that will show that you're a good person, and that your past doesn't necessarily dictate everything about you.
Right.
Which is true with the main character, and it's also true with his best friend, the DA, because it turns out the DA is the one who set the fire in the cabin.
Okay.
He saw what was going on with the other kids, and he didn't know what to do, and he wanted to scare them, but it got out of hand. But he also became a DA specifically to make amends for what he did in the past.
Do you think that's a common thing among police or law enforcement? Do they have things that they regret? And
I think so. I think
really?
so. I mean,
I've never thought or heard that before.
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I wasn't a criminal by any means, but there were things that I wished I hadn't done as a teenager, and through the years when I dealt with people, especially when I was a detective, you get to see how an event has affected a person's life, and sometimes it's destroyed their life completely,
Right. Yeah.
and sometimes they rise above it, and that's what I tried to put into this book.
I think that's great. So you think that would connect with contemporary audiences?
Absolutely, because especially nowadays with what's going on in the world, I think people tend to make mistakes about how they think about things, about current events, what's going on in the world. Sometimes they're proven right, sometimes they're proven completely wrong, and they have to change if they're going to, become a better person. You got to be able to admit when you're wrong and go on from there.
Right. Definitely. Now you're saying, because we usually ask about sequels or spin-offs. So in this is the first book in a series of 3 currently?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So, and those 3 are already written?
Yes, they are, and published.
Okay. And then are you working on a 4th, or?
I'm working on I have the idea in my head for the 4th one in the series, and I usually work these things out in my head.
Yeah.
I try to figure out what the plot's going to be, how they're going to catch him, things like that. And I got most of it,
Yeah.
but I haven't started writing yet. But I'm planning on getting to the fourth one soon.
Okay, cool. You have a lot of reviews on Amazon. What's some of the more memorable feedback you've gotten from readers?
Uh, the thing I like the most is when they say they couldn't figure it out. I
Mm,
love when they say, I had no idea. It was a great twist. It was a real page turner. The characters are realistic. I looked at it like a movie in my mind. All those things are exactly what I tried to do.
mhm.
So those reviews are great. I've had, one or two bad reviews, but usually it has to do with English
Oh, okay,
grammar,
gotcha.
you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
because I self-edit everything myself
Oof, it's tough. Sometimes
it's
you don't see it. You read it,
constantly.
and it gets by. You're copy editing your own stuff.
Yeah, and then someone
But
writes
someone
to me and
points,
says, "You got a mistake on this page."
yeah, and you never even saw it.
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
So so maybe we're touching on, but any aspects you would change other than spelling or grammar? Is there anything in the book that you feel like, I wish I had done something a little bit differently?
Um, Actually, in the third book, which takes place about, it's called Stone Murder, and it takes place a lot on the reservation.
Hmm.
And I introduce Bobby Blackbear, who's a lieutenant for the tribal police, and I completely misread or didn't figure out that when a murder or something like that occurs on a federal reservation, the FBI is called in.
Oh, not yeah. There's not like a sheriff or a police
Well,
officer.
there's tribal police who work on it,
Oh,
but
okay.
usually because it's on federal land,
Yeah.
there is some FBI that come to the scene of the crime.
Even the just check in, even if
Yes,
the oh,
yes.
okay.
And I didn't put any FBI in that story.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
think it affects the story in any
yeah,
way,
yeah,
but I try to be realistic.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
I
that bugs
forgot
you.
about the FBI.
Yeah, yeah,
That I would change.
yeah. Okay, cool. And then final question: what are some comparable movies or TV shows for this
Um,
book
I
for Under My
I'd
Thumb?
say I'd say Longmire is comparable to it.
Okay.
I'd say some of Yellowstone nowadays is comparable to it. Um, some old TV shows like I'm trying to think like Rin Tin Tin, Have Gun Will Travel.
Hmm.
The Western theme is very prevalent in all three of the books.
What about True Detective? Did you ever watch?
Um, yeah, I mean, I try to keep all police procedures exactly as they should be.
Oh, okay.
I really do, because having done the job for a long time, I know police procedure. I know what you can and cannot do. And even though sometimes one or more of my characters might go a little off the reservation, so to speak,
Yeah.
it's basically all police procedure is correct.
Okay. So you're saying True Detective kind of deviates too much for you
Uh,
from from
yeah, a
procedure?
little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of times I find detective series and TV movies and stuff. The guys do a lot of stuff that they'd never get away with.
All right.
Not
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
million years.
Yeah. Well, most people aren't detectives, so when they're watching True Detective, they don't.
That's
It,
true.
it wouldn't be like a glaring issue for them.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, anything else you think we should include, or you feel like we covered
Um,
it?
Not really. I think that the series and even the separate books would be very easily translated to either a show or a movie. I really do. I
Okay.
think it would be. And as far as, I know we talked a little bit about uh, editing and changing of characters and things like that. I'm a firm believer and I don't know everything about it. And if it could make it a better, product, great. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, in case there's like changes or
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I think that's I know it's tough. There's some people that are like, no, 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 it's got to be exactly like the book.
yeah.
And people get upset when it's not. And then other people are like, well, movies and books are different, or so they are allowed to have that leeway
Yeah.
to make it a different type of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I always look at like, Jaws. The book is totally different from the movie.
Oh
So
yeah.
many things are different in it. And did it make it better? I guess. I love the book. I love the movie. So I guess it was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate your time,
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.
Bye bye.